We've all been there.
Everything I try to read is bad.
Am I illiterate?
Literally just read one page to prove you can still do it. Hey Siri, how do I rediscover my childlike wonder and appreciation for literature?
It's been 12 years since I finished a book. My family is dying. All I have to do to save them is read 20 pages, but I just keep watching the Josh Hutcherson whistle edit on 2x.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Hi, hello, I hope you're taking care of yourself. If you're new here, my name is Lexi, and if you're here with me today, you're either actively in a reading slump, in which case my condolences to you and your family, or alternatively, you're feeling proactive and you want to be ready the next time that you start to feel yourself slip. Either way, I got you, okay? We're gonna get through this. Everything's going to be fine. What you're about to experience is a very brutally realistic guide, informed by my own history, on how to de-slump yourself. You and I are not going to pretend that you're ready to read a great American novel right now on faith, trust, and pixie dust, okay? Save that for when your brain is capable of reading more than 70 words at a time without needing to reboot. This is a guide for how to remember how to like books at all, again, when the world feels gray and existence is a prison. It has a different use case than the books that you should be uncorking when you want to read an all-time great that will stay with you for the rest of your life. We're back in the gym. You gotta work up to that. In this video, first I'm going to unpack some general tips and tricks, and then I'll follow it up with some specific recommendations, but more importantly than that, just some general vibes of books to look out for when you feel like you're in dire straits. Okay, we're just gonna get right into it. Jumping in with a quick intermission to talk about the sponsor for today's video, which is Book of the Month. And this is related, I swear, because sometimes when you're in a reading slump, nothing sounds good. And the concept of making a decision about what you want to read in an ocean of books can be so overwhelming to the point where you end up simply choosing nothing. But fortunately, Book of the Month makes it so easy to find something that you're actually going to love. Every single month, they have their team of experts curate a list of the most exciting, very compelling, interesting new releases that are coming out, with a special focus that they're putting on debut and emerging authors. And all you have to do is go on their website, pick out your favorite book from a much smaller selection of things that you know are going to be good, and then they ship it straight to your door for a fraction of what a typical new hardcover will cost. And if one month comes around where you just happen to hate everything, like not a single pick for the month seems like it would be interesting to you, they have the technology to help you. You can just skip that month, no questions asked, they're not going to charge you, and you can just wait for the next month when the new picks are announced. But even more exciting than that, and also new this month, is that they actually have audiobooks now. So if you're not a print book girly, if you're busy, if you have maybe a long commute, you can pick up one of the new releases as an audiobook instead, which is just really cool. This month, I got in print Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which I'm embarrassed to admit is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. And then on audio, Funky Fresh, I got Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. I've only heard good things about this author, and if you know me well, you know that I love books that are liable to just destroy me. So I'm really excited to get to that one as well. If you want to join me in reading any of these books, you should head on over to bookofthemonth.com, where for a limited time, you can use the code FORYOU to get your first book for $5, which is basically free, like strongly would recommend. And thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Back to it. General tips and tricks and trade secrets that I will be sharing with you. Number 1, be brutally honest with yourself. If reading is normally an important part of your life, it's really important to sit down with yourself and unpack honestly why you feel like you're slumping. And this can come from a variety of different reasons, but I feel like outside of external circumstances that you can't really control, the most common is trying to be a type of reader that you're not at a deleterious time. And by that, I mean, as an example, if you know that you're not going to like War and Peace, but you feel compelled to force yourself through it anyways for the culture, so that way you can be the kind of person who reads War and Peace, you are never going to want to read a book ever again. And this is not specifically an at towards War and Peace, it's just one example. Really anything that you just have to force yourself to like and engage with that ends up feeling like labor. That's what I mean. Because I have found that in order to leave a reading slump, you have to figure out what deep down you want to read. And oftentimes, this won't be pretty, okay? This won't be Instagrammable. This won't be something that you want to share with your new hot girl book club. Sometimes it's going to be a published Raylo fanfiction, or warrior cats, or monster smut, or a trashy young adult dystopian novel that was released in the year of our Lord 2012. But I stand by that the best way to remind yourself why you actually like to read is to read the kind of story that made you fall in love with it in the first place. And I want to make clear here that as somebody who reads very eclectically, I would push you to leave your comfort zone every once in a while and try out something that you wouldn't have picked out for yourself. Like, you might not know what value there is there unless you give it a go. But my point is, the time to do that is not when you feel yourself entering a reading slump, okay? It is when you already feel like a god because you just pounded powered through like 2 or 3 5-star books in a row on a beach vacation. And then you can use that leftover dopamine as a bridge to enter new terrain in literature that you have not yet explored. But when you already feel like every book in the world is bad, that is, in my opinion, possibly the worst time to leave your comfort zone. Because you might end up thinking that you hate an entire genre of books just because you had one bad experience with something new that you read at the wrong time when you weren't really going to enjoy anything. So that's why it's important to be self-aware at times like this. You should just be asking yourself what in your soul you want to read. And you might not have an answer for that, but frequently you will. It's just not going to be something that you're super proud of. Tip number 2, lower your expectations. I am begging you, do yourself a favor and stop deluding yourself that you can read 200 books this year. Probably you can't. And even if you can, an important question to follow that up with is, at what cost? Because the rest of your life is impacted significantly by dedicating that many hours every single day to reading. Nobody has that much time without significant extenuating circumstances. Most people that you will see making content on BookTube and BookTok either A, read as a part of their job, B, read as a part of their degree, or C, at the very least, it is their big primary hobby. They are making sacrifices to read that many books. It's where they're putting the majority of their time, often at the expense of their other hobbies and of their social relationships. And I would know, as somebody who once read instead of thinking thoughts or confronting problems or going outside and managed to somehow springboard that into reading as a part of my job, I am not a normal civilian in that respect, okay? And none of your other favorite creators are either, no matter how much some of them might want to convince you that they are. So when you're on social media, you're going to be seeing all of these massive wrap-ups from the 1% of the population that is actually reading that many books every single month. And most people in the real world who consider reading to be a big hobby do not read even a fraction of that number because it's simply not sustainable. So if you start feeling bad about yourself because you're not wrapping 20 books a month like that one girl on TikTok who has literally zero responsibility overlap with you, you are holding yourself to a really unfair expectation. And worse than that, again, it's going to make reading feel like homework and like boxes to tick off instead of like a way to broaden your horizons and explore beautiful stories and think complex thoughts and just all of the other actually important and good reasons that there are to read books. It's counterintuitive, but when you free yourself from feeling like your reading slump is holding you back from achieving some sort of ridiculous reading goal, it's going to be a lot easier for you to actually get over it. Tip number 3, a case for letting yourself slump. And with everything I said in my last point, I just want to say that it's also okay to just exist in a reading slump for a little while. Depending on why you're there, trying to force yourself out of it can actually make it worse. And hot take, sorry for the productivity girlies out there, but the entire concept of a reading slump, I think, is informed by just this never-ending wellspring of content that we're barraged with constantly all of the time. If you're always seeing all of these cool new releases hauled and wrapped up on social media by dozens of your favorite creators, of course you're going to feel like you're missing out by not reading them. You're going to feel guilty that your backlog is so long. You're going to feel frustrated with yourself when you haven't read a book in a little while because it feels like you're being left behind. But I would like to argue that that guilt is the unnatural part of this. I feel like most of the time when I slump, and it's not just because my life is very busy and I'm very stressed out, it's after I've read something just really, really awesome, like 6-star book, no notes, and then I followed it up directly with something that was underwhelming and mid. I feel like I get in this mood where I'm like, why even live if I'll never experience this 5-star feeling again, if I'll never read another book that's good ever again, if I've already exhausted all of the options, which obviously is very dramatic and ridiculous, but I feel like it's also a natural thing to feel after you engage with a piece of art that has a deep impact on you. And in my opinion, it can actually be a lot healthier to let yourself feel those feelings and sit with that piece of art than it is to just hop straight into another piece of content right away. The only reason that you feel pressure to do that is, again, because of this pretty unrealistic picture of reading that you're going to see on social media. And most of the time, if you can get away from feeling so much FOMO, you will actually find that engaging with those emotions, with whatever is keeping you in that world and holding you back from being able to move into a new story, if you're able to do that properly, you're just going to eventually want to read again. You're going to seek out more stories that make you feel that way. But instead of instantly trying to fill a void that a really great book left behind, you're looking for things that can exist in conversation with the stories that you already love, which is a way more realistic goal and also a more fair expectation for the books that you're going to be reading. So yeah, sometimes, especially in those cases, it can be best to just let the slump exist and run its course, and you're gonna know when you're ready to move into something new. But if none of that works, tip 4, the brute force method. If what I've already said doesn't work, it's been a little while, you're slumping for a reason that you don't understand, you have no idea what you want to read to get out of it, then it's worth trying to just brute force yourself through it. And to do that, I have some specific books and, more importantly, genres of books that I would personally recommend looking into. These will not work unilaterally for everybody, okay? They're completely informed by my own experiences, and I'm a little bit of a gremlin, if I'm being honest with you. But if you're following step 1 and just trying to be honest with yourself and what you actually like in your goblin heart, then I hope that at least least a couple of these sections can serve as inspo for you. The first thing I would try if you're in a reading slump is a new version of something that you used to love, or just the thing that you used to love. That's also an option. I am a slave to nostalgia. I have a truly god-awful memory, so if I wait like 2 or 3 years, I can basically read a book for the first time all over again. I'll know the general arc of the plot and the vibes of the characters, but my brain has too many microplastics just swimming around up there to remember very much more than that. Really, it's a curse most of the time, but you know what? You gotta work with what you got. So if you're anything like me, it's worth picking up a Percy Jackson, a Hunger Games, just something that you read as a kid that you really remember loving, because probably it's going to take you right back to that place and become something that you won't want to put down. But I also think that a different version of this that still gets you to harness that feeling of nostalgia while also allowing you to engage with cool new books is to read something that is kind of derivative and low-key slightly a cash grab and really is just a new version of something that you used to really love. I promise you that like 1 million books have been published trying to be Twilight and The Hunger Games and Divergent, and some of them are even good. And this is a pretty personal category, so it can go a lot of different ways depending on what is nostalgic to you, but one book that I picked out to demonstrate this is All of Us Villains. This is like a magical goth GF version of The Hunger Games, where the cast is a lot smaller, so less overall people die, and there's less gratuitous violence as a result, but it still has the high stakes and the arena romance and the people who don't want to be fighting are forced into this, and the tournament as spectacle energy that The Hunger Games, especially the first book, does. The concept is once every 20 years, these 7 very powerful, old, and influential magical families pick one of their teens and send them into the proverbial woods to fight in this tournament to the death, where the winner wins for their entire family control for the next 20 years of high magic, which is basically just a roided up version of normal magic in the world that in theory has the power to level cities and transform entire continents, but it seems that most families in history have used kind of to just fuck around and live really opulent lives. And this tournament is normally a secret, but for reasons it's been leaked to the media. So for the first time, everybody knows it's happening. Everybody's watching. People thought that high magic was completely extinct. Turns out it's not, and it becomes this very big deal. The story is multi-perspective. The characters are quite interesting. I've only read the first book, but it's actually a duology. The second book came out maybe a year and a half after I read the first one, and I just never got around to it, even though I do intend to eventually, but it's there, so you don't have to worry about it being not completed or anything. Another book that felt nostalgic when I read it despite being new to me, I've talked about it on this channel before, but it's Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. If watching The Princess Diaries just over and over again is a core memory for you, if you came of age and a part of you was legitimately upset that you had not yet been told that you were next in line to rule a small foreign power, this book will speak to your essence as a human being. It is about this girl who finds out when she's about to graduate high school that she's the only daughter of the Crown Prince of Japan. And she flies out there, she gets a sexy bodyguard that she falls in love with, because of course she does. And the book is really just her adapting to life as a royal. It's just really good. It's really cute. It has all of the heart of one of those classic Disney Channel movies that you used to love. Just a really good time. Next, I would recommend books with cool formats or epistolary novels. I'm a simple woman, okay? I read TTYL and all of those other middle school books where it was just people texting to each other written out on a page, and I ate them up every single time. And this part of my history actually captures all of the worst parts of my personality, because I used to hate descriptions when I was 12, especially in third person. If I was reading a book and I was bored, I would be skimming everything except for dialogue. And I'm not proud of my roots, okay? I've grown, things are different now, but I still really like it when instead of typical descriptions, a book is making really interesting structural decisions with the way that the story is formatted. And by this I mean that instead of consistent chapters, you also have like segments from a podcast or emails or some other piece of media that's woven into the story. And the first book that comes to mind for this, for me, is Cover Story by Susan Rigetti. This book is about a college student named Laura who's kind of just having a bad time in school, but she ends up getting this incredible internship with Elle magazine. And when she's there doing intern things, she ends up getting taken under the wing of this very mysterious, very chic fashion editor whose name is Kat Wolf. But she ends up finding out very, very quickly that Kat is deeply involved in this life of crime, and Laura ends up getting swallowed up by this massive web of lies as she gets closer and closer to Kat. The plot of this book is maybe a beat at best, but the way that it's formatted as everything from diary entries to FBI correspondence to emails to text messages to just random notes that are left at a hotel, it gives it this like found footage vibe that makes the mystery really interesting to unravel. So I think it'd be good if you're looking for something kind of unique. Another book that comes to mind for this category is This Is How You Lose the Time War, with an asterisk that it's pretty different from the other books that I'm recommending in this video because it's quite dense and pensive in tone. And when I'm in a reading slump, I typically gravitate towards things that are a little bit more straightforward. board. But I wanted to include a pick for people who might have a more literary taste, but are still looking for something that they can fly through, that will help get them back into reading consistently, that they can feel good about, that is cool for other reasons. And I think that this is a really good pick for that scenario. This book follows these two women who are in high positions on opposite sides of this gigantic intergalactic war. And for reasons, they end up starting to write letters to each other, and then they fall in love and things happen from there. And the events of what actually happens during the plot of this book are difficult to grasp in the best of times, but it kind of doesn't matter because the yearning and the feelings and the love between these two women, like, that is the point of the story, and it's just really, really well done. Half of this book probably is some of the most beautiful love letters that you will read in your entire life, and the other half of the book mostly is just them finding those love letters in interesting locations in time and space. So that gives this book a really interesting atmosphere, and the entire thing is less than 200 pages. So if you're looking for something more literary that still fits in these categories, I think that this would be a really good pick for you.
Next type of book I'd recommend is a low brain power but high stakes fantasy novel.
The absolute last thing that I feel capable of when I'm in a reading slump is getting through that first 100 pages of an epic fantasy series, where all of the characters are named shit like cadmium, phosphorus, wolvingtree, and they're speaking a language that feels like it's only 30% English until you finally catch on, and then that's the point when you can finally immerse yourself in the story. And I actually love stuff like that when I'm in the right mood for it. Some of my favorite books of all time have very, very complicated worlds, but I'm just trying to be realistic here about the amount of brain cells that you probably have to spare right now. And it's just not enough when you already think that all books have been sent to this planet solely to disappoint you. That is just not the time to pick up something that requires functioning neurotransmitters to understand. But it still can be really, really nice to lose yourself in a fantasy world. And if you can get really immersed in a series, that is maybe one of the best things that you could do to break out of a slump. So to maximize your chances, I would go with a series that requires very little thought input from you in comparison to the amount of action and stakes and excitement that you're going to get in the story. Just get something that you can bury yourself in. That's what you're looking for in a fantasy novel when you're in a reading slump. And my first personal rec for this is the Cruel Prince trilogy by Holly Black. This was actually the series that got me back into reading in a big way, so it broke what is functionally the ultimate slump of adulthood. It is about this girl named Jude, who is a human that is raised in the world of the Fae. Except these are not your like Tinkerbell little baby fairies, okay? This is the variety of Fae where they're just evil and have basically no emotions except for greed and mischief and a lust for power, and their society is just like deplorable all of the time. That's the vibe of those Fae. And Jude, being something of a freak herself, wants to run this world. She is a power-hungry girly, and I wanted to be her the entire time that I was reading this series. I thought she was so cool. There's also like a true enemies to lovers subplot that runs through the entire trilogy, as in they capital H hate each other. And it takes some time for that to flip around, just simmering in the backgrounds of the book. But the primary focus is on court politics and scheming and just Jude doing shit because she can in the name of becoming the baddest who ever exists in the world of the Fae. And this series requires, in my experience, a shockingly low concentration of brain cells in comparison to how smart you're going to feel reading it and understanding all of the different games that are afoot in this world, all of the different machinations of the court. It is just fantastic, and I'm obsessed with it. And the other fantasy series that I'm going to be recommending in this video is the Raybearer duology by Jordan Fuego. I read this towards the beginning of this year, and I remember just being very impressed with the way that the author was able to instantly down me into the proverbial dunk tank of this world, just feeling completely immersed, like within pages of this story. The series follows a girl named Terasai who is raised for the sole purpose of assassinating the crown prince of this kingdom, but the twist is that the prince is immortal, kind of, and the only way to kill him is to form an authentic two-way bond of mutual trust and compassion with him. His immortality is also contingent on those bonds. So that's why only those people who have that bond, who are a part of what is called the council in the story, are able to kill him. So to make it all work, to make Terasai go into this with authenticity and an open heart, Wicked Witch Mom basically wipes Terasai's memory and then sends her into this gauntlet of other children who are all competing to be a part of this council. And things obviously happen from there. Like, you will fly through this. The world building is fire. The platonic and romantic bonds in the story are all just fantastically done. It's just really great. The next type of book I would recommend is a cozy, bingeable young adult mystery. This is maybe my personal most used just by volume tool for getting out of a reading slump. I just love a good cozy mystery, and adult thrillers are frequently just so fucked up as an essential core component of the genre, to the point where I found that the best place to get that like Knives Out feeling can be in young adults. Frequently these books are going to have very short chapters, they're going to be fast paced, they're going to have a lot of twists. It's like they're written for readers to just soar through at an alarming pace. And maybe if your brain is the size of Saturn, you'll just just solve all of these and they won't be fun for you. But for me, and for most people, I think that most of the time the mysteries are plotted well enough to engage the part of your brain that wants to investigate something. On theme with this, I'm actually currently reading the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I'm having a really good time, at least so far, so I think this would be a good pick. But my love for young adult thrillers definitely started with the Truly Devious series, so that's gotta be my first recommendation for this category. This series takes place at an academy where every single character who gets accepted into this academy is the best at something. And Stevie is presumably admitted because she is the best detective, and she wants to investigate the mysterious disappearance of the wife and the young daughter of the guy who initially founded the academy many years ago. They're all dead now. Obviously, this is like a beyond cold case. If I'm remembering correctly, literally everybody possibly involved with the crime is dead, but it's the central mystery of the series. And obviously, as Stevie starts to investigate, there's a real modern murder and other bad things happen, and just things go a lot deeper than she thought when she was initially getting into it. And overall, it's just a really good time, with the exception of the romance, which I personally just did not like at all. The guy reminded me strongly of JD from Heathers, and if you're into that, you know who you are, but I personally was not. It's a relatively small part of this plot overall, and I still thought it was fantastic. The other rec I have for this category is the Inheritance games. I have not finished this whole series, I haven't read the conclusion, but I thought this first book could have been a standalone, and I honestly stand by that, with the exception of like the very last chapter. And it follows this girl who ends up being named as the sole heir of the entire fortune of this, like, I think oil tycoon, maybe, just some very rich man. Except her inheritance is dependent on her moving into his gigantic mansion and like solving all of the mysteries and puzzles that he's left behind there. Obviously, his entire clan, all of his spawn, are very confused about the fact that this random girl that they've never met has become the sole inheritor of this fortune that they all thought that they would have. So it becomes this very interesting grand mystery with the main character at the central point of all of it. This does have a love triangle inside of it, which in my opinion is the only reason why it was extended out into a trilogy, because again, it really did not have to be. I think the author just wanted to like beat that horse until it was beyond dead. So keep that in mind. I still thought this was really fun. All right, next category is a juicy contemporary drama. If you are the kind of person who will listen to your best friend's rants for 3 hours about the inner lives of people that you have never met and will never meet, and then you do that every single time with rapt attention, sincerely bought into the idea of psychoanalyzing these strangers, I would look for a book that is first and foremost for the tea, for the chaos. Like, you want to appeal to the side of yourself that is here for the gossip and the gossip alone. And if you can find a book that is messy, that feels like gossip, it's a great way to make sure that you read that shit to the end. Like, your curiosity will not let you stop. The first book I picked to demonstrate this is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I am well known as a super fan of this woman. I think that she's brilliant. And this entire book reads like a really long hobby drama post. Like the particular kind of rabbit hole where you end up reading for hours in the middle of the night about communities that like schism and divide into sex after some ridiculous argument where the intensity doesn't make any sense at all to people who don't knit or like play 2000s point and click adventure games. It's that particular vibe of drama, but for the publishing industry. And also it matters in a more significant way because the publishing industry has a really big impact on what we read and what the world is like. But the seriousness of this subject matter never stops this book from reading like Rebecca just dunking on all of the awful things in publishing and spotlighting some pretty fascinating conversations that happen in the industry. Like, yes, it's self-indulgent, it's kind of meta, it's full of just deeply annoying characters. Almost nobody is worthy of rights in this book, but that's a really unique combination of qualities for a book to have. R.F. Kuang fears nothing, okay? Like, she could write the Burn book, but Regina George could never write Yellowface, and that's all I have to say on that. The second book that I picked for its messy drama is Counterfeit by Kirsten Chen. Is this the best book I've read in my entire life? No, but you don't want that right now. Your brain isn't ready in a slump for the best books I've read in my entire life. This is a train wreck, and it's tea, and you're going to hate everyone, and you're going to need to know in the core of your being what's going to happen. That's what this is here for, okay? Nothing further than that. This book is about this woman named Ava, who kind of hates her life, mostly for no reason. Like, it's fine. She has a pretty charmed existence. But the point is that she is unsatisfied, and this old friend from college ends up reaching out to her and being like, hey, help me con people with counterfeit luxury handbags. Help me do that, and I'll make you a lot of money, and it'll be really fun. And Ava's feeling chaotic, so she's like, sure, I'm game. I'll do that. Let's con together. And for reasons that you explore in the book, they end up getting caught. And the book is split up dual timeline with Ava talking to the FBI during the investigation of what's been going on, and then also her recounting her past and how she ended up in this position. But I just love rich people doing bad things in fiction. I find it fascinating as a subgenre. Okay, last category for this video, and also the broadest category I find when I'm slumping, is a palate-cleansing romance. Frequently, the trashier, the better. A good trashy romance can just work wonders when it comes to breathing life back into my spirit. And this can take a lot of different forms, because sometimes I will purposefully read a book that I know know that I'm not going to like, because I know that I'm going to obsessively finish it and feel compelled to tell the entire plot to my long distance low commitment best friend. Sometimes there is nothing on planet Earth that I want to do more than that. And I'll be honest, Colleen Hoover, God forbid I say her name in this forum, sometimes she can be great for that. I have historically used her books to break slumps with just sheer rage, so that's a sub-strategy that you can try to employ if you want. You should know yourself well enough to know if hate reading a book is going to be something that's going to engage you and be a kind of guilty pleasure fun experience, or if it's just going to make you miserable, okay? Look into your soul, be honest with yourself, it should be clear. But if you want a real recommendation, my favorite guilty pleasure trashy romance novel author by far is Ali Hazelwood. Check and Mate, when I talked about it earlier during my ad, I wasn't joking. This is actually my most anticipated read for the rest of this year, as ridiculous as that sounds. I'm pretty confident that Ali just uses a trope generator to pick out a couple of different tropes and then build the same exact romance around those tropes every single time. I mean, she used to write fan fiction, right? And let me tell you from experience, don't ask for the receipts, I'm not going to give them to you, but that is what you do when you're writing fan fiction, okay? That is how that world works, and it's very easy to understand. And you cannot tell me that Ali Hazelwood is not good at her exact niche of writing and at accomplishing exactly what she's trying to accomplish. Like, I will not tell you that her books are not cringe and cheesy, okay? I'm not going to defend this. I'm not going to say this is literature, this is the song of my people captured on page. But I will eat this up every single time, especially in dire moments like reading slumps. Because here's the thing, okay? It's all right to like things. I think it's easy to carry a lot of shame when your favorite books are objectively cheesy or cliche, or let's just say it, let's put it out there, okay? Traditionally feminine or written for a non-heterosexual male audience. It can be easy for the world to make fun of you for liking things like that. Society has invented a lot of ways to make those interests out to be lesser than. And that can make you read silly little books like this less or engage with them less because you don't want your hobby to be cringe. And it would be great for your general morale and well-being if you could do this all of the time, but especially when you're in a reading slump, I want you to shed every single societal expectation that you feel that you are violating when you sit down and tab The Love Hypothesis instead of A Tale of Two Cities. Just allow yourself to read something for entertainment that will make you feel joy in an uncomplicated way. I think that's one of the best things that you can do for your mental health. And screw what anybody else says, okay? Like, you're allowed to like things. It doesn't mean that you're incapable of recognizing flaws or having critical thoughts about what you read. Your taste says literally nothing about your intelligence, so it's okay to just read something that makes you happy when you're having a bad time. Please never feel like that's not acceptable, okay? Like, the only reason why people are going to be mad at you for reading a book with this kind of cover is because they're misogynists, or alternatively, they just desperately need to touch grass. But that's everything. Those are my recommendations. I hope that some of them were useful for you. I really encourage you to also just use the genres in the categories as a source of inspiration to find things that you might want to read, since a lot of them are like your size, your feelings, your moods matter, picking out a version of the thing that will work for you. But all of the books that I've talked about today are things that I think you could inhale regardless of what you feel ready for or capable of. That hopefully can be a step into getting you back into reading the big things that you really are looking forward to and that you really do think that you're going to love. If you have any other recommendations for breaking a reading slump that have worked for you, please leave them in the comments so that maybe somebody else who has exhausted the options in this video, they have somewhere to go. That'd be really cool. And just remember that you are a whole person beyond the amounts of books that you're able to read this week or this month or this year. What matters is that you're reading books that you love, regardless of how many there are. If you like this video, please actually like it. That'd be very funky, fresh, cool of you to do. And if you like me, you should subscribe to my channel. We do a lot of different things here. Really no order and no structure, just complete chaos all the time. That's kind of the energy. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Bye!